You walk into an empty room, but you feel like you're being watched. Pulling out your recorder, you start to ask questions, just in case. Maybe you don't expect to hear anything, but a few hours later, when you listen back to the recording, you hear a voice that isn't yours. Shivers run up your spine as you realize you were right. Someone or something else was in that room with you. Our guest today is an expert on electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs. But her stories aren't just about phantom voices. She's been encountering strange things her whole life. Let's talk to Cyn Shrader Hill today on Homespun Haints. Hello, Hainted Loves. Welcome to Homespun Haints. I'm Becky.
And I'm Diana.
And today on the show, we are thrilled to bring on Cyn Shrader Hill. She is an author, a paranormal investigator, and founder of Elk Valley Paranormal. And she's got some stories for you, as you can imagine. And we are really excited to bring her on here in a few minutes. But we do have a few things we want to talk about first, because
yes, these are important things.
Are very, very important things. For instance, I just ate a 3-day-old stale donut that I just could not bring myself not to. So these are the things that we need to talk about.
Gross. I'm so sorry.
It was actually quite good. It was like a little crunchy.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Like the bag full of powdered donuts. It's been aged. It's an aged donut.
It was a good donut. It was like a handcrafted artisan vanilla frappuccino flavored donut that nobody had gotten to.
Nobody had gotten to.
I was like, you're mine.
Is that because you hid it in a cabinet behind a coffee cup or something?
I mean, these things do happen sometimes.
You're rapidly becoming the shortest in the household, aren't you? So, you know, soon you'll be able to hide things in the lower cabinets from everybody else.
They never look there anyway.
See, if you guys cleaned a little bit around here, you'd get some old donuts too.
Well, speaking of eating things, our guest today casually mentioned, and I wish we had followed up with her, but she casually mentioned something about the ghosts of turkeys. And I'm talking about the gobble gobble, the birds.
Not Turkish ghosts.
And then I mentioned this. I was like, oh yeah, turkey ghosts. And Diana's like, I have a story about turkeys. I was like, oh.
And then I backtracked.
You're like, oh, it's not that. Like,
wait, maybe it's not that interesting.
Okay, no, but you got to tell me, because I think we all have had turkey encounters at some point in our lives. And they usually don't go well unless you're taking that turkey and putting it in an oven. And even then, sometimes it doesn't go well, depending on your skill levels.
Oh, yeah, it's never gone well for me. Not once. I've done that so many times, and it always turns out regretfully. You do pluck it first, right? Before you put it in the oven? Because I've heard that helps. Wait, I just put it in alive. I'm like, here you go. Here. Slam! That's how you do it, right? I didn't have to stuff it. It wasn't empty. Yep.
Well, anyway.
really complicates the turducken making, though.
Oh, my goodness. Well, tell us your turkey story, Diana.
There is a place north of Tulsa where I spent a lot of time as a child called Osage Hills State Park.
As in the Native American tribe?
More than likely, yes. So Osage Hills State Park, there are a series of tent sites and cabin sites where I spent a lot of time when I was growing up, because it was basically the one and only place within an hour of our house that we could go and be outdoorsy. That was like our outdoorsy thing, kind of like when you went out and sheared sheep, I guess, but more like in the woods.
I did a lot of outdoorsy things. I can't say.
Well, but you lived in the woods, basically.
Yeah, I did.
We don't have any woods in my neighborhood. It's far away, so we had to drive 45 minutes to get to the woods. And this was kind of our cabin in the woods experience when I was a kid.
You shouldn't be jealous. I bet you also had things like shoes and running water.
You had shoes and running water. You know, you had shoes because you weren't allowed to put them on the table.
The only shoes I had were the ones that I wildcrafted from twigs and branches and turkey leather.
Like on Naked and Afraid.
Anyway, continue. You poor thing, you had to drive an hour.
Poor thing. We had to drive an hour to go experience
Being poor.
cosplay as homeless people. And we weren't even camping in a tent at the time. We were camping in one of the rental cabins, but the cabin was very rustic because the windows were screens, which is important to this story because this story is a story about sounds and insects and darkness. So imagine yourself in a cabin with all the amenities of Becky's childhood home, no electricity, running water, or shoes, but otherwise there was a fireplace, there were beds, there were couches.
You had screens. I'm sorry, that is quite nice.
Compared to your grandparents' house.
Yeah, you didn't have to wake up with
just open air.
Things stuck in your hair and things biting you between your toes. If you've ever bitten between your toes, it is not a pleasant experience. Yeah, okay. So screens.
That's kind of part of this story.
Gosh, you guys thought you were roughing it and you had screens.
We were roughing it, and we were out in the woods. This was roughing it for our family, our metrosexual family.
Okay.
We were staying at this cabin, doing rustic-y things like roasting marshmallows and making s'mores, doing puzzles, because that's what you do when
puzzles
you're
anyway.
Right? That's what you do when you're no electricity, no cable, no. Well, there was electricity.
Yeah.
But,
you had electricity, and I bet you had a toilet.
Okay, it was fancy camping. Yes, there was a toilet.
Was it a composting toilet, or did it actually flush?
It flushed.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was lovely because we'd always wait until the first frost so there'd be fewer live bugs, and we'd go out through the woods and see icicles falling off the trees, and it was kind of an interesting experience for us city slickers to go see the woods at the beginning of the first frost of winter. But the thing about winter is it gets dark very early, and when you're a 90s kid expecting various forms of entertainment and easy technology, you're not really too down with the idea of it getting dark at 5 o'clock and then having to hang out with your mom for the rest of the evening. It got to the point where we would just sit there and stare at the fire. Not really entertainment, but just kind of meditatively staring into the fire, listening to the wasps and various bugs that were holding on to the end of the season, banging up against the screens as they tried to get in, moths banging up against the screens trying to get in to our fireplace. And the sounds that would come from the woods through these screens were terrifying. We lived in the city. I don't know what these sounds were. I still don't know what these sounds were, but some of the sounds got really weird. And one of these sounds was more common first thing in the morning. Just before the sun would rise, we would hear this sound that I couldn't place that was very distressing. The dog would go crazy whenever we heard this sound, so I'm thinking it's wild animals. It's got to be coyotes or wolves or something creepy out there. Some kind of predator coming to attack us, and that's why the dog is freaking out. And so one morning we woke up, the dog's going nuts. We're still kind of sleepy, foggy. We're not thinking right, and we're thinking the dog just has to go potty. So we open up the door so the dog can go outside and go potty. And the dog takes off like a beeline, and I hear the noise. And it's an enormous flock of giant wild turkeys. And the dog is finally yes, I'm gonna murder all of you now. I've been trying to murder you for weeks, and I haven't been able to get out there because every stupid screen and all the stupid doors, and I'm just a miniature schnauzer with no thumbs. And the dog bowls into the big group of turkeys, and the turkeys do this. They part like the Red Sea. And a group of turkeys goes left, and a group of turkeys goes right, about 5 feet, and they stop. And the dog is so confused. He just stands there. He is also a city slicker. No idea what to do with these turkeys. And we just laughed. He's just standing there looking back and forth oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Which turkeys do I follow? And so we were able to go get the dog pretty calmly and keep him from murdering turkeys. But as we're turning around and I'm coming back in the house, trying to reach down and hold the dog. This is a miniature schnauzer. He's short. So reaching down, holding the dog, coming back in the door, and I open the screen door, and a 6-inch long centipede falls on my head.
Oh no.
It was dead.
Oh, thankfully.
I didn't get bitten by a centipede, but it was quite a scary experience. And that's where I realized I'm what you might call indoorsy. I never went outside again. Period. End of story.
That's why you're so pale.
Yes, it is.
So I was hoping you were going to say that the dog got a turkey. You had a nice big meal.
I wish.
You roasted it over an open fire. Don't try to cook a turkey over an open fire. That sounds like salmonella in the making.
Yeah.
But
Ugh.
the centipede thing, yuck. I hate centipedes.
Yeah.
Was it the ones with the red bodies with the long yellow legs?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those are so gross.
It was starting to turn black, though, because it had been dead
so
for a little
rotten.
while, I guess. But
Gross.
yeah, the ones where it's big enough that each segment is the size of a June bug.
Yeah. Those are massive.
They are massive, and they're extremely poisonous. I
know.
understand. Yeah.
I know. Thankfully, our guest coming up had ghost turkeys only to deal with. But before we bring on Cyn, we do have 2 new patrons to give a shout out to.
Awesome. Oh, my goodness. This is my favorite time.
So for those of you that don't know, we do have a Patreon where you can get bonus content. You'll get an extra 2 episodes a week, including the regular episode and the bonus episode that we put out for everybody. And everything is ad-free.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great if you are so sick of all of the ads that we pop into these episodes. And yes, there's a lot because we're poor. Sorry. It's the only way we can make money. It's from that and from our Patreon. We're so grateful for everybody who joins our Patreon that you get all this stuff for free, as well as other stuff that is too spicy for our regular audience. And we have 2 new people that have recently joined our Patreon. We're so thrilled to welcome Molly. Thank you so much, Molly, for joining our Patreon. And for Alfred. Both of you, we really, really appreciate you joining. This is wonderful that you're now part of the Homespun Hates Patreon family, so thank you.
Thank you, Alfred and Molly, and Painted Loves. If you want to be part of the fold, the inner circle, those in the know, all you need to do is go to patreon.com/homespunhates. You can sign up for bonus content, etc.
And if you're looking to get even more Becky and Diana, please follow us on our socials at Homespun Hates on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where you can also access these episodes as well as some video content of us. And for those of you that are not a part of our Patreon, enjoy this commercial. Today on the show, we are thrilled to bring on Cyn Shrader Hill, who is a friend of another person you've heard from on the show, Miranda Young of Ghost Biker Explorations. Cyn is a paranormal investigator, an author, a Tennessean, and an all-around spooky lady who has so many stories to share with you today. So, Cyn, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Welcome.
Thank you so very much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with both of you.
So tell us a little bit about all of the things that you do, Cyn, because you do a lot.
I do. I got into all this kind of late. Paranormal investigating. I founded the group shortly after that, became an author shortly after that. So everything is just kind of organically flown through. I got into this in 2013. So everything's just kind of snowballed.
So 10 years, basically, that you've been building this paranormal career. And the group that you founded is Elk Valley Paranormal. And your headquarters are in Lincoln County, Tennessee.
Exactly. Right in the middle of the state. We are 80 miles south of Nashville, 30 miles north of Huntsville, Alabama, and we're the little house-looking county. If you look at the map, we've got a little chimney on our house, so right in the middle over the state line of Huntsville.
I love it. Like a little haunted house.
Exactly.
Cyn, you were telling us before we started recording that before you started working with paranormal investigators, you actually had a lot of experiences, I suppose is the best way to describe it, because of some abilities you didn't even realize you had. And it actually was pretty traumatic, it sounds like, from your childhood. Is that correct?
It was very traumatic growing up, and I didn't understand what was happening. I thought I was going crazy. I thought I had a brain tumor. I thought something was wrong with me. I was very quiet growing up, so much an introvert. Now I'm an extrovert and you can't shut me up. But growing up, and until I was about 30 years old, you couldn't hardly get me to talk in front of people. Growing up, I had severe panic attacks. Prior to that, I had my first deja vu experience at 6. That's kind of freaky. When you have a true deja vu experience, I was sitting at my first grade bulletin board. We were in art way back then in the 60s. We stayed in the same classroom and everybody kind of did their thing in one group or the other. And I was in the art group. They had on the bulletin board the United States seal. So I was drawing that. I'm a little bit artistic. So I went straight to that and was drawing. And as I was drawing, I had drawn the eagle and I got to the arrows and the talons of the eagle. And I had done that before. It was the weirdest because I was 6 and I was like, where did that come? This is the first time I've ever drawn this. I've seen it, but I've never drawn it. But in my mind's eye, I could see my hands drawing what I was drawing. Still, to this day, it gives me chills. It was that heavy. Later on, 10 years old was my first panic attack. So all this stuff was building up. It was my first big slumber party. It was Halloween night. So, that time of year is the best anyway. And it was the first time I'd actually spent Halloween away from my family. So I was at a friend's house. There were like 10 of us little girls. And we were sugared up on Krispy Kreme donuts, Coca-Cola, Sundrop, all that kind of stuff. Running around crazy. And suddenly I got so freaking dizzy. I just can't explain it other than my heart was racing and I hit the floor. It was that, okay, I'm feigning kind of thing. So I went immediately to the floor and put my feet up on the couch. I remember my best friend, my very best friend in the whole wide world. She comes up to me and she goes, has this ever happened before? And I said, no. And she goes, oh no. And in my head, I heard dun, dun, dun. So in my head, I have a brain tumor. At 10 years old, I'm thinking, I have a brain tumor. I'm dying. I would tell Mom, I've got this going on. And she'd say, oh, you're fine. You're growing up. She didn't understand. She never had anything like that. I was the first one in my direct family that had it. I found out recently that my cousin has also been through this, and she was embarrassed to talk about it growing up as well. So I found out much, much later, after years of horrible panic attacks, 2 or 3 emergency room visits because of them. If you're having a really bad panic attack, you honestly think you're having a heart attack. And it's excruciating. It's terrifying. It's impending doom. Nothing explains it better than that. You are dying. You're dying and nobody can help you. Your heart's racing. All you can do is pray if you do that. And I was praying. I was, help me. I don't know what to do. In 2013, when I joined a group, I had a small panic attack. And one of the leaders walked me off and said, okay, calm down, just breathe. Let's just take some deep breaths. Well, doing yoga all my life, I knew about deep breath. And yeah, that did calm me down. And if I'd go to a quiet place, I could get calm. I didn't realize that a group of people made everything worse. That's why I was going away by myself. I didn't understand. God was leading me going, okay, go to a quiet place. You're going to be fine. Just go to a quiet place. I didn't understand that. This leader said, you are very empathic. You're taking on everybody's energy. Calm down. Can you white light yourself? Let's do something to calm you down. It wasn't until probably 2014 or so that I had kind of mastered that. You never really master it, especially if something has plagued you for that long. But I've finally gotten to the point where I haven't had a panic attack, a severe one, in over 7 years. But because I was taking everybody's energy in, it was just bombarding my system and I couldn't deal with it. Now, I don't know if the deja vu had anything to do with that or not, because that was a freaky thing. But deja vu happened to me over the years, just ever so often. But that was the biggest one when I was 6.
You mentioned also something where you would notice your dolls staring at you when you were a child. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That was also somewhere between 6 and 10 years old. We lived in a very old house. It had actually been moved down from one spot down the hill on logs to another. It was built in the late 1800s. And so whatever energy had been embedded in the walls or whatever, floors, it was all still wooden floors, and they just put things over it. So it was incredible. It was also filled with antiques from family members that have been passed down. And as you know, things can be attached. Something was attached to one or more of the dolls I had. And I had been given a couple of China dolls. I don't know if it was them. I don't know what it was. I don't know if this spirit had taken over one of the stuffed animals or a doll. I don't know. I just know that I couldn't get dressed in my room until I turned every one of them around. And some of them, some people I know listening are going to go, oh gosh, she has lost her damn mind. But there's somebody out there that goes, you know what? My doll stared at me. My doll stared at me. That lasted through high school. I couldn't do it. I would go dress somewhere else. Couldn't do it.
So do you think it was that you were living in a haunted house, there was weird energy, you were picking up on the energy, you didn't know how to interpret it, and you were looking around and you saw eyeballs and your brain went, that's where it's coming from? Or do you think it was actually a haunted doll?
I think something was attached to something. It's that big of a feeling about it.
Gotcha. So when you turned the dolls around, there was definitely like a big difference in that feeling.
Yeah, a huge difference. It's kind of silly talking about it to me now, but back then it was not silly at all. It was serious. No, turn those damn things around.
We had a medium once tell us that anything anthropomorphic will have some kind of soul. Maybe the energy around it attaches to it, or just by its very nature. I 100% think dolls most of the time are haunted. I don't like them.
A really good friend of mine is a psychic, Mark Elliott Foltz, and he's the one that actually does the illustrations and the book covers for me. And he's a dear friend, and I helped him edit his book called Darkest Corners, and it was about dolls and how they started. And there's some creepy stories behind dolls. If you ever get a chance, find his book. Mark Elliott Foltz, Darkest Corner. There's a story in there about frozen Charlotte, which is a true story. Back in I believe it was 1800s, this teenage girl was going to a first ball. She was dressed up. Her mother told her, you are not wearing enough clothes. And she said, well, I can't cover this beautiful dress up. And she froze on the way to the ball next to her intended. He didn't know it. He gets to the ball, she's frozen, she's dead, and that's the basis for Frozen Charlotte, the China dolls we have.
Whoa.
Yeah, Frozen Charlotte.
Oh, that's chilling.
Creepy.
We'll definitely have to include a link to his book in our show notes, along with all of yours, of course, as well.
Thank you.
This would actually be a good time to mention, what are the titles of the books that you've written, Cyn?
The very first book was Whispers in the Dark, True Ghost Stories and Eerie Tales. That was back in 2018. The same year, Mark and I brought out a book of fiction together that is Web of Terror. It's a collection of short stories. The third one was actually supposed to be my first book, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. It was They're Speaking, Are You Listening? My Most Compelling EVPs. And it goes on different investigations and what happened and the EVPs I caught. And then you can go onto elkvalleyparanormal.com and actually listen to them. There's over 100 in the book. And you can go to the website as you're reading each chapter. And when you see an EVP, I've got it on the evidence page under They're Speaking. So you can actually listen to them. The fourth one actually fell in my lap, and it was about our loved ones coming back to us after they die, or deathbed visits, or any kind of signs that are left, pennies, feathers, redbirds, anything like that. And also some near-death experiences. So that's what this book was about. And it kind of wrote itself because I didn't have that much to put in it. I started it right after the third book came out. And then in 2020, I lost my motivation. I don't know if it had something to do with COVID. I just quit writing. Followed through to the next year. No writing. I was seeing a good friend of mine on the south side of the Fayetteville Square, Valerie Young, at Young Vintage Antique. And she's got all the sage and stuff that you need in this area, you guys. So went up to see her, and she said, so how's the book going? Like a ton of people had. And I said, yeah, it's not. It's just not. And she said, when were you going to bring it out? And I said, Easter of 2020, and then Easter of 2021. And she said, well, you got a little over a month before this Easter. And I said, she goes, you can do it. You can do it. So I said, let's see how much I can get done. So within the next week and a half, I banged out several stories and really got a good start again early this year. And that's when the most unimaginable thing to my family could have happened. I don't have kids. I have cats. But I was a godmother to my nephew. He was my baby. I had started training him to film for the group, Elk Valley Paranormal. He would go to murder mysteries with me. So he was my go-to. He was the most talented person I've ever met in my life. We lost him on April the 6th of 2022. I still don't believe it. Susan, my sister, was not even supposed to have children. And so he was just the love of my life, the love of Susan's life, the love of my mom's life. And then he's gone. And so my book stopped again. It was a few weeks later, and I just had this weight just over me. And then all of a sudden, it was like somebody whispered, this is Wyatt's book. This is Wyatt's book. And I was like, oh, that's why I lost my motivation. This book was supposed to come out after he died. This was supposed to be for him. So his story just wrote itself. And it's the most excruciating thing I've ever written. Wyatt is 19 and a half years old. And writing his obituary tore my heart out. And then having to write his story ripped the hole and just left it open. We're still just kind of reeling from it. I had people from all over the country send me stories. I had even one from London send me a story about her grandfather and his cat. There's several pet stories in here. So that was that book, and it's still ripping me apart, but I guess it's the best book I've written so far, according to sales and friends and family, of course. But it's also the most heartbreaking. We'll never get over it.
What is the name of that book?
It's Not Goodbye, Signs from Beyond.
Did you receive a sign from Wyatt other than the whisper in your ear saying that it was his book?
I don't think that was Wyatt. Have not gotten to see Wyatt yet. I think I heard him coming through radio frequency. They were going to post a memorial plaque for him at the local college with his picture on it, and then a little blurb that I wrote, and then a little bit of the lyrics from Rod Stewart's Forever Young. You will remain in our hearts forever young. That song was playing one day when I was going into work. There's a spot within 15 miles of where I live and where I go to teach that there's a dead spot somewhere right in the middle. It's one of those places you're going to drop your call. So the radio also goes in and out, and Forever Young had just started playing, and I was listening to it and listening to all the words, and I'd always liked that song anyway, but now it's just more personal. When I hit that darn dead spot, it started, the static. And I was going, no. I want to hear the song. I want to hear the lyrics. I want to be with my baby. and static again and static again. And then all of a sudden, Aunt Cindy, I don't know. I think I heard that. I don't know. I can't say for sure, but it was my baby's voice. I don't know if I wanted to hear it so bad that I heard his voice come through the radio. I don't know, but I heard Aunt Cindy, and then I haven't heard anything since. I've not seen him yet.
Shifting gears just a little bit, Elk Valley Paranormal, you founded it when?
I was with the first group in 2013, and they kind of trained me. I knew I wanted my own group the whole time. The group I was with was Ghost Hunters of Southern Tennessee, and that was James and Wayne, and they helped me learn about how to go about investigating. And I asked them to come down to the old store to see if my dad was still there. That's how it all started. My cousin had gotten them to come down to investigate her art studio, and she told me a little bit about it. And I said, wait. You actually had a ghost group come down? Why didn't you tell me? And she said, well, I didn't think about it. And she said, but here they are. Contact them. So I did. When they came down to investigate the old store, they found just a couple of EVPs, but the only place that the K2 or anything else actually hit was in my dad's office, directly where his chair was, exactly where he had sat for 30 plus years. He was in that business for about 40. That's where it lit up. There were only a couple of EVPs they found, and one was from the basement. One was a really weird holy mackerel, which nobody in my family used. But the building was very old. The basement was a turkey slaughterhouse back in the late 1800s. And then the second floor was built, which became the first floor because the road was built up so much. So that second floor had been an ice cream plant, a Red Cross office, a furniture store, just several different things over the years. One EVP they got from the basement was turkeys clucking. We had turkey ghosts down there. That is the strangest thing I've ever heard. So I got interested in EVPs, and I started learning how to do the analysis, how to record and how to find the voices. And I became their case manager after that. And I became their case manager and learned how to do EVPs. And in the back of my mind, EVP was perfect for my group. Our county in this area is known as Elk Valley. So EVP, Elk Valley Paranormal, was my baby.
So EVPs are your specialty.
That's my thing.
I love EVPs. I think they are just the coolest thing. They always send shivers down my spine. Tell us about some of the most interesting ones that you'd like to share with us.
Sure. So that third book, They're Speaking, Are You Listening? Some of my favorites from that book, we were at a residence and I could tell somebody was with me. I couldn't see them, but I knew somebody was around me. So I said, I know you're here. I'm just taking pictures. Come with me to the next room. And I took pictures. I did that for a couple of rooms. And about the third or fourth time I said, come with me, the evidence that I found later was this curmudgeon-y little old man saying, I've got better things to do than to follow you around all night.
Oh, no.
That whole thing? Whoa.
Yes, but that was, of course, not a Class A. It is not even a Class B. I had to dig for that. When you're listening to EVPs, you might have to listen to them over and over and over. And that one, you're going to have to listen to over and over. But he's fed up with me. There was another one at that same house that was kind of ominous at first until I figured out, okay, I get it. They were just trying to scare us, and that's all they were doing. They were just trying to scare us to leave. It said, scare them, and then there's a little space, and it says, I'm Legion. Okay.
Ooh.
What? That's directly from the Bible.
Right?
Excuse me. Yeah, and so, yeah, they were just trying to make us leave.
Wow.
But again, you're going to have to listen to the Class A's. Yeah, you're going to get right away. The very first EVP I ever got was "Get out," and it was so emphatic. It was so emphatic. You had no question about what it was.
I feel like these ghosts, they must have like a support group or something they go to and they give advice like, okay, first thing you do is you tell them to get out and then you pretend you're a demon.
Exactly.
So you must know a lot about how to solicit a good EVP, because we've had so many people with so many kind of vague theories on how to get a good EVP. What do you do to solicit EVPs when you're investigating? Not editing later, but your questions and how you set the scene and the mood.
Try to know a little backstory. Try to know a name. Is there someone here that worked at so-and-so? You don't want to be leading if you're actually trying to get pure comments or whatever. But if you know a name, ask it. I asked about a Mr. Myers at an old store here in town, and they answered. I said, "Is Mr. Myers here?" He died years and years and years and years ago, back, I don't know if it was the 50s or whatever, but their response was, "He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead." Really? Really? We got some comedians too. You got some that are trying to just scare you to get out, to leave them alone because that is their spot. They don't want anybody else in that spot. You're bugging them. They just want their peace and quiet and be their little ghosty selves. And then you got these others that are going, "Nah, nah, 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 nah." We're going to jerk your chain as long as you're here.
So you got several he's deads in a row.
Oh, yeah. It was like 4 of them. I don't know. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. Dead.
All different voices?
Yeah. I love them. They play. There is one, and I found out he is my cousin, that shows up to most investigations. And I think he kind of is there as a protection mechanism for me. I never knew him in life. He died when I was very young, when he was in Vietnam. But he shows up at every investigation I do. So if we're doing EVP work, I'll hear, "Bobby's here. Hey, Bobby, welcome." No matter where I go, he shows up. Bobby's going to be there for me. Now I'm wondering if Wyatt will. He might, because I had started training him to film for the group. So there's a possibility that he's going to start showing up. I have not been able to investigate since he passed. I am going to be at the Thomas House in Red Boiling Springs, March 17th and 18th. That'll be my first actual investigation after Wyatt died. It's put on by Unseen Paranormal Podcast, PPF Investigations, and Medics for Paranormal. From what I understand, there's some tickets available. But anyway, I'll be up there, and I'm wondering if Wyatt's going to show up.
Well, let us know.
I will. This book, I told you, just kind of wrote itself. So much so that I've already had people reach out with more stories. So there's going to be a sequel to it. I'm going to bring it out in 2024. But this year, I'm going to bring out some of my darker stories that have happened on some investigations, some weird and kind of creepy stuff. One, it was when I was with the first group, Ghost Hunters. We went over to Columbia, and this woman had, at some point and for a long time, been looking and reading into dark magic. She had been Ouija boarding and anything she could and going about it the wrong way. She had gotten to the point where she was scared. She had thrown her books away, supposedly. She had burned the Ouija board, supposedly. Never doing that again, supposedly. When we get there, now remember, I had started learning how to do EVPs. And so not only was the recorder my friend, but the spirit box was my friend. So we had a spirit box going, and that thing was talking the entire time. And whenever she would speak, you could hear another voice, a really deep voice. I won't say demonic, because honestly, I've never been in a place that I felt there was a demon. I've not been in one yet. I know they're out there. I don't really want to meet one. But this place was dark, and there was a dark voice, and every time she spoke, that voice came out. I could hear some of it, but not all of it. Basically, it was calling her out and saying, oh, no, you didn't. You still got all that stuff, and you're the one that called us, and we're going to eat you. And that kind of thing, meaning they were going to use her energy to live. And the more scared she became, the stronger they became. I've never, ever been into a place that had so many crosses, crucifixes, wind chimes, mirrors, all shapes and sizes on every wall. You couldn't hardly see the color of the wall because there was so much of this on there. And it was because she had gotten so scared that she was trying to get rid of these things, whatever was in there. And she couldn't. When I found the EVPs, they were every one of them was creepy, just like, we're going to eat you, and you called us. You can't get rid of us now, and we're not leaving. They're saying they're going to push us out. We're going to push them out. I called James, the head of the group, and I said, we got a problem. This woman's not telling us the truth. And she's still involved in some of this stuff. And he said, you're not going to believe this. He goes, she called me right before you did and said she didn't want us to come back.
Oh.
And I said, it's because she knows that they ratted her out. We didn't go back. And I had all these creepy EVPs, and I read them to James, and he was like, ooh. Ooh. Yeah, no, we're not going back. We're not going back. So I have no idea what happened to her.
What were her mirrors about? Do you know why she put the mirrors everywhere?
I do. Supposedly, if one of the scarier of the spirits sees a mirror, they can't look into it because they don't want to see what they look like. They want to scare you. They try to make themselves so fearsome and so ugly and so scary that they can't look at themselves. They don't want to. It could be that they were a little old lady in real life and she's just tired of all the people coming into her house that she is haunting. And so she makes herself fearful looking. Well, she don't want to see it in the mirror.
Speaking of protecting yourself, I have one final question from you. How, as somebody who is incredibly empathic, how have you learned how to protect yourself from all of that stuff that comes at you constantly? Can you give advice for listeners who may be going through the same thing?
Again, my friend Mark gave me a meditation. It's a countdown meditation, and it actually resets your aura. I have it printed, so if any of your listeners need it, I will send it to them. It just calms you and it resets your aura. It realigns you and it clears out anything. So anytime you are having any kind of panic, any kind of anxiety, you can go do this little meditation. And what I did, honestly, was record it. I read it, recording it on my phone, so I could lie down and close my eyes or sit in my car and then play that from my phone. And I didn't have to read it. So I do that whenever I need to. Prayer, I always do an opening prayer and a closing prayer at any investigation. I always close any kind of questioning I'm doing, whether it be spirit box or copper rods. I thank them for helping me, but goodbye. Always make sure you close it because that door stays open.
How can we, as paranormal aficionados, ghost lovers, spooky people in general, appreciators of macabre humor, how can we be supportive and not harmful to people who are going through acute grief but want to talk about things like ghosts?
This past year, I have learned some hard lessons. I have learned that personally, hearing he's in a better place, he's not hurting, that stings instead of helps. That's the first thing that comes out of your mouth when somebody loses a parent. Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Well, he's in a better place. He's not hurting now. And they don't mean it to be hurtful, but I swear that has hurt me more than most anything, because I want him. He was only 19 and a half. I want him back. His mother wants him back. His grandmother wants him back. We didn't want him to leave in the first place. So anyway, be aware of what you're saying. Don't just let words fall out. Don't just say words because that's what everybody says or that's what you've heard others say. Come from your heart and just say, I'm so sorry. If I can do anything, let me know. There's no words. Give them a hug. Give them your phone number. That kind of thing. Just be there for people and don't talk over them as they're answering you. Really listen. So if you ask them a question, listen.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, Cyn, this has been such a wonderful conversation. You are an amazing storyteller, which, as Diana mentioned earlier, we had no doubt, you being an author of several books.
They're all available. I'm self-published, so they're all on Amazon.
And we will include links to all of those on our show notes at homespunhaints.com. And Cyn, you also have several social handles that people can follow you on. Would you like to tell us what those are?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Cyn Shrader Hill, author. Reach out to me there. Also got the Elk Valley Paranormal page on Facebook. I'm Cyn Shrader Hill on Instagram, so you can look me up.
Yeah, that will all be in our show notes at homespunhaints.com. Yes. Just so people know, your name is spelled C-Y-N for Cyn. Shrader is S-H-R-A-D-E-R. No C in there. And then Hill is just H-I-L-L. So if you are doing an internet search for Cyn, just type that in and you will find her. She has done a lot of stuff. You will find her. We will include links to all of her books, all her social handles on our show notes at homespunhaints.com, as well as links to Elk Valley Paranormal. And I am so excited to delve in and listen to those EVPs that you have shared with the world on the internet and in your book. That sounds super creepy. I'm very excited.
I hope you love it.
You've been listening to Cyn Shrader Hill on Homespun Haints. As I mentioned multiple times, please check out our show notes at homespunhaints.com to make sure you can see all of the links for Cyn and get access to all of her books and to her EVP recordings. And while you're at it, please go and follow us on TikTok at Homespun Haints, where we will include follow-up materials from this episode for your listening pleasure. Cyn, once again, thanks so much. It has been a wonderful conversation. It's great to meet you. You do so many cool things in the paranormal community. It's been a real joy.
It's been an honor for me to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
You've been an absolute light. Just having you here has been a light for us. So thank you, Cyn. To our listeners, check out her books, listen to her EVPs, and Hainted Loves. Have you heard a very creepy EVP lately? Let us know on our Facebook group, facebook.com/homespunhaints, where this conversation goes on. And in the meantime, you'll probably have a spooky day.
Homespun Haints is hosted by Becky Kielimnik and Diana Doty, and produced by Homespun Haints Media LLC. Editing and music by Becky Kielimnik. Show notes by Diana Doty. If you have a ghost story and you'd like to be considered as a guest for this podcast, please visit our website at homespunhaints.com/submit.